we open on a ship hurtling through the void of space. And on that ship is a woman named Kiana Arden. She is a warrior, a soldier in the service of the Phantoms of the Azure Court, and she is on her way to Scirocco Station. She has heard rumors of the presence of Radiant Council agents on that station around the planet Iris. And she has been sent to investigate those rumors, to find the agents of the Radiant Council there, and to put an end to whatever work they are doing. As her small shuttle hurtles through the swirling miasma of the drift, heading towards Scirocco Station, she reaches into the inner pocket of her coat, and she pulls out a battered old photograph, which she unfolds and looks at. It is an image of 5 people standing on what looks like a verdant world. All 5 of these people are wearing various types of armor, and every single one of them carries an iron sword at their side. All 5 of these figures in the picture are wearing helmets and masks that obscure their features. Kiana Arden, who by some is called Vanguard, looks at the photograph and a frown crinkles at the corners of her lips. There are 3 red marks on the photograph over the faces of 3 of the 5 figures. She takes a moment and studies each of those masked faces, finger gently caressing the photograph. And then, finally, she folds it back up and returns it to her coat pocket as her ship drops out of the drift. Scirocco Station in the distance. Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures, the solo actual play podcast where stories are told at the speed of dice. With me, Steve Morrison, your game master and solo player. Now come on, let's grab the dice and see where our story goes. Welcome back to Season 3 of Errant Adventures, Cry Havoc, as we begin Episode 2. Last time, Alexis Wolfe was searching for the Radiant Council lab on Scirocco Station, and she found it, disguised as a place called the Brightman Initiative. She was able to bypass the security of the Brightman Initiative and get into the actual labs where she met Dr. Yelena Winter, who operates this particular cell of the Radiant Council. They talked for a time, and she made an appeal to the doctor about the illnesses that had cropped up on the station in the last few weeks. The illnesses that had drawn Wolfe to this station in the first place. The doctor seemed to think that it was unlikely that there were any connections between what she was doing and these illnesses, but because some of her own researchers had started to fall ill recently, she agreed to let Wolfe examine the Arisian creatures that she was experimenting on. Wolfe did so and discovered that they were some sort of undead creature that was emitting this strange energy source. An energy source that Dr. Winter was attempting to harness for the good of the station and for the good of her organization. When Wolfe discovered that there was a connection between these creatures and the radiation they're putting off and the illness ravaging the station, Dr. Winter agreed to destroy the creatures. Wolfe was able to help factor some sort of antidote or treatment to help the sick on the station, including Wolfe's contact, Raven Kai, who's the one that brought Wolfe to Scirocco Station. Once the creatures are destroyed and the people who are sick begin to recover, an agent of the Phantoms of the Azure Court, a woman named Kiana Arden, arrives on Scirocco Station and begins looking around. So, as we begin this episode, Wolfe is sitting at a small table in her friend Raven's apartment on the station, and she is going over the research data that she took from the Radiant Council. And she has, like I said, factored some sort of treatment for the illness. And she has spent the last week or so helping out and continuing to oversee the treatment of those who are ill. As she's doing that, let's go to our oracles and roll up a new trouble, because there has to be some sort of trouble on this station. You can never go too long without a little trouble in space. So I'll roll my D100, and here we go. 22. Deprived of a resource. The settlement of Scirocco Station is orbiting the jungle world of Iris, a humid, rain-soaked planet which keeps its secrets under a thick canopy of vegetation. Scirocco Station, the projects are entertainment and salvage. The authority is ineffectual. It is built within terrain or asteroid and industrial architecture. We can remove the volatile energy source as a trouble. And now the trouble is deprived of a resource. So I think this makes perfect sense to me. The whole reason that Dr. Winter was researching the energy output potential of this Arisian creature is because the station is running low on fuel reserves. And again, this is in the terminus. There is a considerable amount of civilization around, but this is a relatively small station in the sector of Veiled Rest. And so I think they're low on the priority of getting fuel. And because of that, the station's orbit is beginning to degrade. And so I think the new trouble is that because the research into this power source had to stop, the station is very much in danger of losing power and falling out of the sky. So Wolfe is sitting at this table going over the details, and the door slides open. Raven enters and I think looks a little bit tired. They approach and set down a small tablet on the table and slide out of the gray coat that they're wearing and toss it over the back of a chair, and then slump down and look across the table at Wolfe. And Wolfe, looking at them, sees the earrings dangling from their ears and the nose ring coming out of each nostril, and just the glint of metal in this strange fluorescent light of the station. For a moment, I think Wolfe is taken back to a different time, and she shakes her head and then says, "Are you all right?" Raven shakes their head and says, "The station's losing power again. We've had to shut down a few sublevels and reroute power. If we don't get some power reserves back soon, we're going to be in trouble." Their eyes, which have been closed since they sat down, open, and they look across at Wolfe and say, I know you're just doing the mender thing these days, but is there anything you could do to help us find more power? We're running on fumes, and if we don't get a power source soon, we're going to have to evacuate the station. And I think Wolfe says, I'll see what I can do. And is going to pack up her gear and head out to meet with Dr. Winter at the Radiant Council. As somebody who is researching power sources, you'd think that Dr. Winter would be the person who would have some sort of solution. She leaves Raven's apartment and makes her way through the station. I think we have to ask the question, does she run into Kiana Arden? And because I think Arden just arrived, I want to set this at a pretty low chance. So unlikely. 25 or less on the D100 will be a yes. 83 is very soundly a no. So I think maybe we see this scene of Wolfe walking down the corridor in Scirocco Station, and she takes a lift down to level 6. And just as she gets on the lift and the doors close, another lift opens and Kiana Arden steps out into the atrium at the center of this station. And she is looking around as if she is inspecting the station itself. In Dr. Winter's office, Dr. Winter is sitting at her desk, and she is also reviewing the power source data when Wolfe walks in. And Dr. Winter looks up and says, Wolfe, what can I do for you? I hope you're not here to shut down more of my research. And Wolfe shakes her head and says, no, in fact, I need your help. The station needs your help. I understand from my friend that the station is running low on power. And I understand because you were doing your research into the power source that you were trying to help the station. And I want to help you help the station. We need to find some way to fix the power. Otherwise, everyone's going to have to evacuate the station. Dr. Winter looks at Wolfe and says, I understand your concern for the station and the people aboard, but I have to be curious. You're a mender. I mean, your job is to heal people, and you've done that. Why do you care what happens to this station beyond this point? Wolfe nods and says, yes, I have healed the bodies of these people, but I have a friend who lives here, and I don't want anyone to lose their home. Look, I'm just trying to help, and I have a ship. I have some know-how. I'm happy to help out however I can. So if you've got some sort of lead, I want to hear it. Does Dr. Winter have a lead? I think it's almost certain that she does. So let's ask the Oracle. D100. 55 is a yes, and it's a match. So envision an extreme result or twist. So yes, she has an idea. What is the idea? Should go for action and theme. That'll help us decide. 83, scheme. And the theme is 35, family. Scheme, family. So the thing that jumps out at me is Dr. Winter was experimenting on this creature, and that creature was emitting this energy source that had potential, but that was creating illness within the station residents. So what if the energy source that these creatures were emitting was not just from themselves, but was from something that they came in contact with on the planet's surface. I think what Dr. Winter says is, well, now that you mention it, I do have an idea. I was going back over some of the logs of the team that recovered the creature from the planet, and they said that in the nests where these creatures were located, there were these strange crystals that emitted some sort of light. I wonder if it's possible that those crystals are the actual power source that we're looking for, and these creatures just picked up some ambient energy from them, and then whatever their strange undead nature corrupted it somehow. If we could get a sample of one of those crystals, I might be able to determine something new, something helpful for the station. Wolfe nods and says, seems easy enough. Can't you just send back the team that got the creatures in the first place? And at this, Dr. Winter looks a little somber and says, unfortunately, a number of the team were injured in the capture of the creature. The nest did not appreciate their presence. I don't know that I could send them down there again. Some of them are still recovering from their injuries, and a few of them are still recovering from the illness that beset the station. Like I said, it's a possibility, but without a team to send down there, I don't know that there's any viable way to test my hypothesis. Wolfe considers this and says, give me the coordinates. I'll go get the crystal. And Dr. Winter looks up at Wolfe and says, again, I realize we just met, and I don't mean to come across as demeaning, but you're just a mender. Going down there is going to require some intense preparation and survival skills. Wolfe looks at her and says, I understand the risks. It's what needs to be done to help the station, and I'm here to help. So why don't you let me worry about the risks and just give me the coordinates? And then she reaches down to her long coat. And I think maybe for the first time, Dr. Winter notices that Wolfe is wearing this long coat, which she keeps buttoned closed. And Wolfe releases one of the buttons and sort of pulls the coat aside just a little bit. And poking out from behind this coat is the hilt of an iron sword. Dr. Winter sees the hilt and her eyes widen just a little bit. And she says, so not just a mender, then. As Wolfe takes hold of the hilt of her sword and swears an iron vow. So let's talk about this vow. I think the vow is visit the planet's surface and recover a crystal sample for Dr. Winter. I think we're going to set this as a dangerous vow because I think there's a little bit of risk to it because of the creatures that are down on the planet, but I don't think there are necessarily a whole lot of steps to get to this thing and get back. Because Wolfe can get the coordinates from Dr. Winter and has a ship, so she can just fly down to the coordinates, go in, get them, and come back. I think the challenge will be in getting the actual crystals, and we'll have to see if that's something that Wolfe has to overcome or if she can just sneak through. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. In the meantime, we are going to do our first action roll of this episode and swear the iron vow. So, swearing on iron. When you swear upon iron to complete a quest, write your vow and give it a rank, then roll plus heart. If you swear this vow to a connection, add +1. Dr. Winter is a connection. We set that up last time. So we're going to take that +1, which is good because Wolfe's heart is 1. Here's the thing about heart. Heart is often about the connection with people. And the thing about Wolfe is that she is a mender and her goal is to help people. But she wasn't always a mender and she didn't always help people. And so there is a certain coldness in her demeanor and her interaction with people that I think sometimes puts people off. So we're going to swear this iron vow. I'm going to roll my D6 +1 for heart and +1 for swearing this to a connection. And then I'm going to roll my 2D10 challenge dice. See what happens. So I've got a 6 for the action score, and then I've got a 7 and a 1 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. So on a weak hit, you are determined, but begin your quest with more questions than answers. Take +1 momentum and envision what you do to find a path forward. Momentum goes up to 4. Now let's envision this. Wolfe receives the coordinates from Dr. Winter and heads down to the docking bay, boarding her ship, the Dead Reckoning. As she boards the ship, Valkyrie, her overseer module, powers up and says, "Are we leaving already?" Wolfe says, "We're leaving, yes, but only for a little while. We have to go down to the planet and recover something for Dr. Winter." Valkyrie says, "Wolfe, I cannot recommend descending to the planet. It is a dangerous place. There is a corrosive atmosphere and signs of bountiful life." Wolfe says, "I know, and I appreciate the concern, but I've dealt with plenty of forge spawn and other creatures in my time. It'll be all right. We'll go down, we'll get this crystal, we'll come back. It'll be easy." Valkyrie says, "You have said that many times in the last year. It has rarely been easy." Wolfe chuckles and says, "Maybe this time will be different." And they take off from Scirocco Station. They arc down towards the planet through the atmosphere, and they approach the coordinates Dr. Winter gave them. But as they draw close, Wolfe realizes that this canopy of trees is far too dense to set the Dead Reckoning down, and that she's going to have to set the ship down a ways away and then hike her way to the location. So she does that. And she sets down in an open clearing, one of only a few within several kilometers of the coordinates. She double checks all of the ship securities and says, "Val, keep the engines running just in case." You're absolutely right. This planet is replete with life, and I'm sure plenty of it is dangerous. So keep the ship ready for me. Wolfe then pulls off her coat and sets it aside. She unstraps the belt that keeps her laser pistol and iron sword around her hips and sets them aside. And then she slips into her bulkier environmental suit that will withstand the corrosive atmosphere of this world. Once she has finished that, she magnetizes the laser pistol to her thigh, and then she does the same to the iron blade on her left hip. Ready now, she departs the ship and heads through this massive jungle. And maybe we should make another oracle roll here, as we are, for the first time, on this planet. And I feel like we could take a closer look at what this planet is like. So let's roll on the planet side feature table. 47. Plunging sinkholes. That sounds fun. So far we've got sinking quagmires and plunging sinkholes. So as Wolfe is making her way through the jungle towards these coordinates, I think we should set a course. This is rolling plus supply, which is at +5. Let's see how well this journey goes. 9 on the action score, 9 and a 4 on the challenge dice for another weak hit. So suffer costs en route, make a suffer move -2 or 2 suffer moves -1, or face a complication at the destination. I mean, we have sinkholes and we have quagmires. It feels like we should engage one of those troubles. It takes hours trudging through this dense undergrowth, over giant gnarled roots and through heavy foliage. There are several points where Wolfe sees the edge of a sinkhole and has to change her direction to make her way around. And then I think she finally reaches a point where she is looking out towards where the coordinates are. And she sees this massive tree that has it seemingly been hollowed out. And there's this pool of brackish green water, hopefully, that is surrounding the base of this tree. And Wolfe has been around long enough to know that there's no good way in towards this tree trunk. It's dangerous at best. It is full of sinkholes and quagmires, and in order to try and get at it from a different direction, it would take her hours upon hours to go around, and she's already losing daylight. Thinking about these options, she doesn't really want to try and spend the night here in the forest if she can avoid it. So far, she hasn't seen any terrible creatures, but she's seen signs of them. Claw marks on tree trunks, footprints that are larger than herself, and she suspects that once the sun descends and the light fades, that little bit of light that pierces through the heavy canopy above, once that fades into night, this place will come alive with all sorts of predators that would just love to eat her. So I think she's going to try and make her way across this area. And I think to do that, she's going to fashion, I'm sure in her gear that she brought with her, she has some sort of grappling hook gun. And I think she is going to fire that across into the trunk of this tree. And then she's going to lash that to herself and use it as a safety line as she makes her way through, just in case she gets sucked into one of these quagmires or falls through a sinkhole. And she's going to use that as her safety line to get through to the other side. So we are going to, I think, roll face danger. And I think that this is going to be expertise, focus, or observation. So plus wits. And her wits are +2. So here we go. That's a 3 on the action score and 2 7s on the challenge dice for a miss with a match. Didn't take long getting into the season before the dice really betrayed me. So on a miss, you fail, or a momentary success is undermined by a dire turn of events. Pay the price. Well, let's roll pay the price and see what that tells us, and then we can decide how we want to envision that. 71. You waste resources. I think the thing that she doesn't want to do is the thing that she has to do. So she sets out across this open ground, and as she's going, she falls into a sinkhole, and the grappling hook catches. She pulls herself out back onto solid ground, and then looks out and realizes that the bark of the tree around where she punched through this grappling hook is beginning to crack and give way. This tree is dead, and it is not going to sustain another jolt like that. And so she is going to disengage the grappling hook, set up a new one, and fire off another. And again, she starts making her way, and this time she gets caught in a sinking quagmire and is being slowly dragged into the ground. And she pulls herself out again, and just as she's like half of her body is on solid ground and her legs are still stuck in this quagmire, the grappling hook gives way, and then the bark cracks and the tree trunk gives, and she pulls the hook free from this dead wood, and she's able to continue climbing her way out at this point. But there's this tense moment of scrabbling and pulling out pitons and stabbing them into the earth and dragging herself out of the quagmire. And then she looks up again and is just like, I don't think that these grappling hooks are going to be enough. And so I'm going to take a loss of 2 supply. That represents the number of things that she has to use, because she made her way out a little bit, and now she has to make her way back because she decides this is not the way to do this. And she doesn't want to continue on because she only made it maybe a few meters into this 100-meter field of dangers. And so she makes her way back out of it and then takes a breather for a minute or two, and then decides that she is going to have to make her way around. And so she does. She proceeds around the edge of this massive field, and she can see on the other side of it that there is a spot where one of the roots of this tree runs out through this expansive area of hazards, and she makes her way around to that route. But unfortunately, it takes her another 3-4 hours to get there, and the sun is starting to set at this point, and the noise inside this jungle is beginning to rise as those nocturnal creatures are beginning to wake. She makes it to this route, and she carefully crosses it, slowly crawling and sliding across it, because she is also concerned that because this thing is dead, that she doesn't know if it will sustain her weight the whole way over. But still, she presses on. And finally, she crosses this massive route to a point where she can now see the opening into this tree trunk. And I think for all of those challenges and difficulties, we can go ahead and mark progress. So we're going to mark 2 boxes of progress as we have now arrived at the coordinates where this nest is. But let us not forget that it is a nest of these strange undead crab creatures. And Wolfe peers around, and let's go ahead and ask the Oracle. Are there a lot of these crab creatures, these undead crab creatures here in this place? I think that it is pretty likely. Maybe even almost certain because of that match on the face danger. So let's go with it. Almost certain. 90 or less is going to be a yes. 47, absolutely there are. So she crawls along the side of this massive, and again, it's like 150 meters tall, this tree, and the canopy is dying. It's there, but the leaves are like falling off, and it's just this massive tree trunk that seems to have been hollowed out, probably by these creatures. And as Wolfe crawls along the wood of this trunk, she reaches a point where she can peek around into the heart of this place. And there are at least a dozen of these undead crab-like creatures crawling around. And sure enough, there is a singular crystal at the heart of this tree. And I think Wolfe, looking at it, is unsure if the crystal was here before the tree, if the tree grew up around the crystal and it was buried at the heart of this tree, or if this crystal has grown up in this place since the tree died and was hollowed out. She can't really tell from this distance, and she knows she's going to have to get closer, but there are at least a dozen of these strange crab-like creatures crawling around. She's going to have to do something to get in there. And what that something is, we'll just have to find out next time. Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures, and thanks so much to Syrinscape for the lovely ambient sounds and music throughout the episode. If you enjoyed the show, please spread the word, and if you want to support the show directly, leave me a review or buy me a coffee at ko-fi.com/errantadventures. If you want to interact with me, I'm at Errant Solo Pod on Twitter and Instagram, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. I also post campaign-related materials on my website, errantadventurespod.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.
Are you looking for a D&D podcast with a dark side? Something more like Game of Thrones and less like Monty Python? Tale of the Manticore is part dark fantasy audio drama, part solo D&D RPG. There's no plot armor here. The dice make all the important decisions. Join me as I resurrect the excitement, wonder, and emotion of old-school D&D. Made for a mature audience, Tale of the Manticore is both a fiction and a game. It's the story where chaos rolls.